welcome to day 2 of our Bake Your Way Through Lent. It is Monday today, the Monday in the week leading up to Easter, and today we are going to be making some rocky road, which is really exciting. The story we're remembering today is a story from a little bit earlier in Jesus' life when he first arrives in Jerusalem. And he goes into the temple and he sees all the people buying and selling and changing money for sacrifices. And he is angry. He's so angry, he makes himself a whip and he drives all of the money changers and the people who are selling animals out of the temple. And he says to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." It's a really important story today because it shows how angry Jesus is about people who are cheating each other when it comes down to it. It's a righteous anger, which means it's something that you should be angry about. It's right to feel angry about. And sometimes we can feel that anger as a Christian is not a very good emotion to have, that we shouldn't feel angry. But righteous anger can be a very holy thing indeed, because it causes us to act to change the things that are wrong in the world, which is what Jesus was doing with this story in the temple. So the way that we're going to make our rocky road this morning is going to help us to get out some of that righteous anger we may have about things. So before we start, I'm just going to start warming up my hob. So I've got all my ingredients ready again, as you can see, and we'll go through them as we go through the recipe. So to start off with, you're going to need 200 grams of biscuits. Now you can use digestive biscuits, you can use rich tea biscuits, anything that kind of crumbles up a little bit. I'm actually using chocolate digestives because I've got loads of them in my cupboard, so I thought it'd be a good way to use them up. But digestives like this are going to be no good. What we're going to need to do is make them a little bit smaller. And to do that, I'm going to use a rolling pin to bash them up a little bit. Now, I need to bash them very carefully and quite quietly because I've got a baby asleep in the next room. But you can bash them as loudly as you want to take out as much anger as you want. So we're going to try and bash them into quite big pieces. You don't want lots of tiny little crumbs, but you also don't want a whole biscuit in your cake either. And while we're smashing them, you can think about the injustices in the world that you feel angry about. So for me, at the moment, I've just done some training on county lines, and I feel angry about the people who exploit and who use children and vulnerable adults to make money for themselves. So I'm going to think about that while I bash up my biscuits. So, as you can see, I have got some bigger pieces. I've got lots of crumbs as well, which is absolutely fine because the crumbs will give it a bit of texture and make sure it's not too thin. And just if I see any really big bits when I bash it, I can break them a little bit with my fingers. Now, when I'm bashing them, that's not to say that you're thinking about bashing a person or a thing in particular, but the situation that people find themselves in. That's what we're going for. So the next thing that we are going to do is melt together butter and margarine with chocolate and golden syrup. So in my bowl, I've got 135 grams of margarine, so that's going to go into my saucepan. And I've got 3 tablespoons of golden syrup. So I'm going to start tipping that in, and I'm just going to carry on holding it because syrup takes a little while to get out. So it looks like I'm using a massive pan for what we're trying to do, but we're going to be adding in a lot of ingredients into this pan, so you need to make sure it's a nice one that's big enough. So I'm going to keep that there. At the same time, I'm going to put in my chocolate. So it's 200 grams of dark chocolate. And if you can find dark chocolate with about 70% cocoa, that's the best thing to do. and it'll give it a nice chocolatey taste. You don't have to worry about it being too bitter because you're mixing it with lots of other nice sweet ingredients. So I'm just going to put in my last little bit of golden syrup with a teaspoon, so that goes in there. Now don't forget, I obviously have already washed my hands before I was on camera, so make sure that before you touch any foodie bits, you are washing your hands too. So we're going to put that onto the hob and wait for it to come to the boil. Start mixing together. I've got my wooden spoon ready to stir it. Now, if you don't have 200 grams of chocolate lying around your house, don't worry. You can add some more butter or some more sugar, preferably a darker sugar or cocoa powder to get up your chocolate amount. The main thing is you're getting that nice chocolatey mixture. So I'm going to go and wait for that to boil. Well, not to boil, for it to start melting, and then we'll move on to the next step. So you're going to want to make sure that you do your melting over quite a low heat. Do it nice and slowly. Mine was a little bit too hot, so it went really fast. And then you risk then your chocolate going quite granulated, when what you want is a nice smooth mixture. So I've got a bit of lumps in mine because my temperature was too high. But it's okay, don't worry, because it will still mix together everything else, so it will still going to be okay. So the next thing we're going to be doing is tipping our biscuits into our melted mixture. So we're going to just again have a little check that they're all the right size for you before you put them in. So my biscuits can go in there. That's 200 grams of digestive biscuits. In they go. Next up, we're going to put in some marshmallows. So I've got 100 grams of mini marshmallows in a packet. Very helpfully, the packet comes in that size, so I don't have to weigh them out. I'm just putting them straight in. There you go. And then you want 100 grams of some other ingredients. Now these can be whatever your favourites are. If you want it a little bit healthier, although it is biscuits and chocolate, you could do 100 grams of raisins or nuts or apricots. You can fill it lots of dried fruit. You can use popcorn. You can use, if you've got any bits of chocolate bars lying around, you can cut them up and put them in. You can use cereal, so chocolate hoops, cereal hoops, or stars, anything like that. So I've got a mixture. I tried to do them kind of even, but I discovered that popcorn is very big. So I've got 20 grams of popcorn, so that can go in. And then in my bowl here, I've got, coming up to the rest of the 100 grams, I've got some Reese's cereal, so that's peanut butter. I've got some sultanas and I've got some pieces of walnuts. So I'm going to pour that in as well. They can go in. And as they all mix in together, we can think about the different ways that people find solutions to problems in the world. If I come across a problem, I might solve it very differently to somebody else, whether it's someone close to me, my husband or my children. But when we all work together, all those different solutions are the best way of working out what we're going to be doing. So we're just going to mix all those together as well as we can. Now I've got lots of ingredients in here, so it requires a lot of heavy moving it around. But the idea is you want to make sure that everything is coated in that chocolate mixture, and it will bring them all together. If it's not in the chocolate, then it's not going to stick when we put it all in the fridge at the end. So you need to make sure that your chocolate is covering absolutely everything. You may think that there's not enough chocolate to cover everything, but if you keep stirring, I promise you it will all come in the end. So we've got a very varied mixture there, which is quite a lot about the world as well, I suppose. If you think about all the different people that make up our world, everybody is very varied, and we all come together and make the world a very special place. Now, because the chocolate mixture is quite hot, it's starting to melt the marshmallows a little bit, which is good because that gives it that extra bit of stickiness that will pull it all together. But also, because the marshmallows are melting, it's getting nice and thick. It is a little bit more difficult to stir. Also be aware that when you're stirring a hot pan, be very, very careful. You might need to get an adult to help you, because if I touch the pan, it's going to be quite hot. I'm being very careful to hold on to the edges. Right, so I think that's all nicely mixed in. So I've got my trusty baking tray there. It's the one I use for most things. So all I need to do is tip it. Oh, look at that. Tip that into the baking tray and push it all out to the edges. Try and make sure that we push it down as much as possible, because you want everything to stick together so that when it comes out the fridge, we can cut it into chunks and eat it in slices. So I'm using 2 spoons just to make sure that it doesn't all stick to my wooden spoon. And again, just pushing that out right to the edges. Now yours are not going to look the same as mine, because you're probably going to have slightly different things in yours. But those marshmallows are definitely nice and sticky. All the way up to the edges. Try and make sure it's as flat as possible, because you don't want any areas where you haven't got any mixture, or you've got big holes, because no one wants a piece that's got half of it missing. So this is why it's a good idea to have your biscuits in reasonably small pieces, because if you get big ones, it's more difficult to squash it down if you get them at the wrong angle. So again, making sure it goes right to the edges. And go, and it's given it, because of the melting marshmallows, a sort of marbled look on top, where the sugar is going around in little spirals, which is nice. Okay, so that is going to go in the fridge for 2 hours, and then we'll get it out after 2 hours and see how it's getting on. So I'll see you soon. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours and the cake has been in the fridge for that amount of time, and as you can see, it's set. When I've got 2 hands free, I will tip it out onto the counter or onto a cutting board. I can cut that up into squares, and we can enjoy that later on. So hopefully yours is looking good as well. Don't worry if the top looks a little bit rough. When you turn it out, because the bottom of your tin is flat, the bottom will be nice and flat, so you just put it upside down and it will look really smart. But if you wanted to decorate the top or the bottom, then of course you can do it as well. So as you eat your cake, maybe with a member of your family, then just have a chat about the places that you see things are wrong in the world, and ways in which we can work together to bring God's peace and justice into those situations. Now, as you can tell, this one is very excited about this cake. Can you get any up? No. So we're going to go and cut it up and we'll enjoy it. So we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.